watching What to Watch, and I'm Jackie James.
I'm Clint Gage, and with us again this week, David Griffin, our editorial guru. And new to the table, Sydney Goodman. How you doing?
Welcome.
I don't know which camera to look at.
Literally any of them, I think.
Yeah, just around, yep.
I don't think I'm in frame on that one.
So, it feels like it goes without saying, but spoiler warning, if you haven't had a chance to go see Avengers Endgame yet, get out of here while you can. Also, I believe it made enough money to where I think everybody saw it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have seen it.
So we should be in the clear, but just in case, if you're like one of the 3 or 4 people that haven't seen it, we're going to be talking about some spoilers. So let's dive back into some other Avengers talking points that we want to cover again for a second week. There's a discussion around Captain America and his decision at the end of the film to go back in time to return the stones, ostensibly, but to stay back there and live out his life with Peggy, as we see in the final shot. There's a question about whether or not that is in keeping with Captain America's character. Is that out of character for Captain when you start pulling on that thread of what it means for him to have stayed in the past?
Well, so assuming that I completely understand how their time traveling,
I think the best way to do is assume that we don't.
Yeah.
And the fact that right now there's no imminent threat, there's really no reason. I think one thing that I've learned watching these Avengers films is that if there's no giant thing destroying things, then they kind of just hang out.
Yeah.
And just kind of do
Valid.
It's all Black
stuff.
Widow making sandwiches.
Yeah. And so I feel like if there's nothing really on the horizon, then I could totally see him reasoning, well, they don't need me anymore. My time has ended.
Yeah. David?
Quick bow.
But what's to say that he didn't, help in some way? Because when he went back, he was still Big Steve, wasn't Small Steve. So he could have done some vigilante work or just been Captain America in a different way, in a different era. I mean, I would love to see more stories, which is probably why they did this, because they can tell more stories, whether on Disney Plus or in a movie of what is Cap doing post World War II? What's he doing? Does Peggy still join S.H.I.E.L.D.? How did their life change or stay the same in that time period?
Right. He did have Mjolnir with him.
He did.
He did.
He did travel back with the hammer.
I don't know. I was okay with it. I really enjoyed Captain America's storyline, and I just thought that he had changed and developed so much, and I always wanted him to be reunited with Peggy, and I was kind of like, did this mess up time? And there was kind of 2 of them, and I was like, I don't care. I just want Captain America to be happy.
Wait, time travel? Oh, I don't care. I think I said that quite a lot during the movie.
Me too.
He got his dance. He finally had his dance with Peggy.
Too. But at the risk of messing up some time.
We're not going to think about that. Remember time travel, whatever. Yeah.
But I mean, you kind of have to, right? Because he goes back in time and he gets together with Peggy, obviously. We know Peggy had a wife. Peggy had a husband and kids.
Yeah.
They're not around anymore, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So so then it becomes a thing about it's yes, Captain America finally gets to do this selfish thing, not necessarily in a bad way. He's earned it, right?
Yeah.
It's great. He gets his happy ending, but at the cost of potentially risking some weird ripple effects in the future. So it's is that out for him to all of a sudden decides yeah, you know what, that's a good idea. Is that a strange turn for him to make there at the end of Endgame?
I think you're making a lot of assumptions about what Marvel is going to do or not do with this time travel stuff, because I think then you kind of get into this little vortex of, okay, well, now Loki has gone wherever he went. What does that mean for everything else? If he doesn't die and Thor doesn't watch him die, how does that affect Thor's decision making? I don't think they necessarily want us to think too hard about it, because then it just all unravels.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's just kind of okay, Cap's happy, and I'm happy with that. Who cares if there's a bunch of alternate
everybody's just been rooting
timelines
for
and
Cap
going
and
to
Peggy
hell.
to get back together.
Cap's happy finally. I'm cool with that.
We got
so.
that. There's a version where Cap is happy, but there's also a version where the Ancient One is just totally screwed, according to her own sort of explanation of the weird magic timelines that she showed.
As long as he puts the stones back,
That's what I got
should
from
be
it.
okay.
That's what I got from it. It's if the stones are back, then who cares if you're
Yeah.
messing up other people's lives? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
One thing
but for Cap to have that attitude though, that's what I think is not.
he didn't get the
in keeping with-
explanation from her though. So who's to say that he
Bruce
necessarily?
just never.
Bruce.
But
Well,
Bruce
Bruce-
had to have explained it to him because Cap's going on the mission to return the stones.
But I'm saying Bruce could have, for all we know, Bruce could have come in and been like, all we have to do is return the stones, and
Full
everything
stop.
that's just how time works. If the stones are there, everything's perfect.
So worst case scenario, Cap actually just had a kind of a heel turn at the end. It was like, screw all that other timeline business. I'm gonna go get my dance. Best case scenario, Bruce just forgot to tell him.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Communication's
Let's just say
hard.
that happened. Yeah.
Settled.
It's hard.
This week there was an interview with the writers Marcus and McFeely that came out where they talk about sort of the nature of how Steve went back, and it's more going into a different dimension as he returned the stones, and he sort of created his own little offshoot dimension where he could be with Peggy, and so all of the problematic things that we might run into, there's kind of a loophole for that, right? Because it's more dimension hopping instead of time traveling. But does that let him off the hook for not popping back into the main timeline to help out? Or
Again, I'm just happy Cap's happy. I don't care about the time travel stuff or alternate universes or whatever, but yeah. Okay, so sadness. A lot of our favorite people are gone now, but who's going to take the reins now in the MCU? Who will be the leaders? David, you look confused, so I'm going to start with you.
I am confused
just a
because
panicky reaction from
kind
David
of
right off the bat.
assumed-
Did you not realize that, some of them died?
No, I know people died.
Some people
No, I
passed.
know Tony has passed, and that's very sad. But no, I mean, it is sad. I mean that. Moving on, though. What I'm
really
confused
sad.
about is I thought Captain Marvel was going to be like the clear-cut person to take over everything. It just seemed like that's where they're going. But after Endgame, I'm not sure anymore. I feel like with like the Thor Guardians thing, like of all the endings and of all the likely scenarios, like that's what I'm most excited for. So I'm like, are these guys going to be? But I mean, they're not really leaders.
Yeah.
They're not the best leaders. Thor and
Okay.
yeah.
So with the Captain Marvel thing, I will set aside any other opinions I have of her involvement in that movie and la-di-da, whatever. But I do think that with knowing that this Avengers, they were kind of like graduating the first group of them, I think it still leaves it open that she can come in and be the leader.
We need to see
Yeah,
more of
I
her. We
think
need to see
so.
more of her. We spent so much time with Tony, you know, that it just feels like, of course, he's the leader. But now that he's gone, we haven't had enough time with her. And she was gone for a good chunk of the movie. You know, she was off. She's like, I'm
Most
too
of
far
the
away.
movie.
Yeah.
So she can't be the de facto leader after
Yeah.
this.
Well, and that's the
Not
thing
right
about
away.
that's the thing about her character too, is they leaned so hard on the idea that like, oh, there's other worlds that don't have the Avengers, and I'm needed there. Like
Yeah.
that was the whole thing with like her. I'm going to be out this whole movie, and then I'll be back right at the end. So like, they're going to have to throw away that whole mentality to get her to come back and be an effective like leader of the Avengers, like
Yeah.
a present leader, right? So they're gonna have to move away from that. Which I agree with you. I think it's more likely that it's Black Panther, that it's T'Challa.
I said Black Panther.
Yeah.
It is interesting though because Brie Larson has a 7-movie deal. She's only done 2, so she has 5 left. So for me, it seems like they are kind of leaning towards her. But then the last 2 movies, she's always been like, I gotta take care of everybody else. I can't deal with y'all. So I'm like, is she really going to be the leader? Because they really haven't been setting that up. So I agree with you on that. I just personally love T'Challa. Like I want him to be the leader. So like that's personally what I would want. His movie deal, I think he had 5 and he's done 4, so they could do a contract extension or something like
it
that.
doesn't seem
So,
like he's going anywhere.
Yeah,
He
I
seems
love him.
stoked.
And I
He seems
love
to
the
be
Black
like
Panther,
leaning into
everything,
being
so.
T'Challa in real life.
Wait,
Yeah.
really?
He dresses like Black Panther.
He does
like,
dress
in
like
real
I'm
Black
gonna
life.
say
Panther. He does,
something
yeah.
controversial.
Uh-oh.
Here it comes.
I really like his character, but I have a hard time taking him seriously, like when I was seeing Endgame, because there were so many photos that I saw of him doing the like Wakanda Forever and just looking absolutely miserable. And so I just like, I'm having a really hard time whenever I see him. I just imagine him being like, oh my God, what am I still doing here?
I'm
Like,
still doing this.
this battle's lasting way too long.
Yeah.
What am I doing? But yeah, I don't know. I feel like going back to the Captain Marvel thing, I think I have like no attachment to her necessarily to be the leader
Not yet,
or not be the
anyway,
leader.
right?
Not yet. But I mean, think about how many movies we had before we got an Avengers film. And I would imagine that she'll have a movie before we get to another Avengers.
Yeah.
And that can easily address her feeling the need to tend to Earth, or for whatever reason she doesn't really care about these other planets. That's so secondary. I think that they're in a good place right now to kind of decide who they want to lead.
And that
Yeah,
could be
that's
one of
very
the
true.
great dramatic points for the next arc of this Marvel saga is who's going to take the reins, because maybe they'll be, I don't know, they'll be scattered and
Yeah.
leaderless, and they won't know. It's like, oh, wait, who's going to make the plans? I mean, maybe, Nick Fury will kind of come back and
Yeah.
take a larger role in things, but I think that's going to be one of the dramatic, narratives for the
Yeah.
next story.
Yeah.
I feel like Spider-Man's still a little bit too young. He's like figuring things out. And then I love Doctor Strange, but I feel like he just kind of like owns his thing. I don't really see him like trying to be the leader. And then Guardians of the Galaxy is just kind of like their own thing. We love them. They're like the rebels, you know? So
something interesting that I was thinking about after I saw Black Panther was the idea of Shuri kind of taking over this Iron Man role, because she is this inventor. I think she's fantastic. I can't remember the actress's name, but she is also fantastic apart from her character. And I think that she could be a really fun bet for Marvel and Disney to lead this second group of Avengers.
I love that idea.
Even outside of the movies. I think she'd be a really interesting character, but just as like a publicity play, I think that would be so awesome to have, you know, Shuri be this like Iron Man figurehead.
We saw that with Loki and Tom Hiddleston. Like, he was supposed to be kind of like, they were like, yeah, we have him here. And then he was just so popular, they just like kept on creating content for him, you know?
Yeah.
So Shuri's extremely popular as well. Like, I could definitely see something like that happening. So, good point. Good point.
Okay, so obviously the team, we've had some losses. We've got some new people stepping up in the Avengers. What is the Avengers lineup going to look like moving forward?
That's tough.
Yeah,
That is really
there's
tough.
a lot to cover.
Did you see how
It's not
neither,
like
I feel like
it's-
neither of us, we both
tough.
didn't really react.
I was looking at kind of in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like,
Rock,
no one
paper,
behind
scissors.
there.
Who goes?
I think a lot of that's going to depend on what's going on with Disney Plus, because I don't think Marvel's going to come out. Not that I've talked to Kevin Feige yesterday or anything, but I don't think that they're going to come out with another phase. Like this is our next phase. It's just, I think it's going to come up. Hey, these are the next set of movies. Here's the next set of TV shows we have coming out on Disney Plus, and we know those TV shows are going to be set in the MCU. It's not going to be like a Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing or something like that. We're like, yeah, it's kind of there, but not really.
doing their
Or
own
Daredevil.
thing,
It's really going to be in there. So I think it depends on those series. They could bring in new characters in the movies and develop their characters they already have, like Bucky, Hawkeye, Falcon, and develop them in TV world and bring some new characters in the movies.
Yeah,
so
so
they can
the-
tackle a lot more content with Disney Plus and the
Yeah.
MCU.
The Disney Plus shows that we know about right
Yeah.
now. Hawkeye's got a show.
Hawkeye's a show.
Yep.
WandaVision.
Yep.
WandaVision.
Some combination of Scarlet Witch
Yep.
and Vision, which I'm really pulling for more Vision in a turtleneck or a V-neck sweater.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yes.
my vision.
We got the Bucky.
Bucky and Falcon.
Falcon. Yep.
Although now that Falcon's got the shield, maybe they're going to rename that Bucky and Captain America.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Loki.
Winter
And then
Soldier.
Loki.
and
But Loki
Captain
is going
America.
to be
Winter Soldier and
yeah,
Captain
Loki
America.
will probably be a prequel series, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah, Loki
Yeah.
will be mixed in there somewhere too.
Yeah.
So we got those guys that are doing on Disney Plus. But for the films, what do we think the next Avengers lineup is going to be? I guess maybe the first question is, when do we think we're going to see another Avengers movie?
I would imagine not for some time. I mean, think about how many movies came out before we saw the first Avengers, and I feel like it was a lot. I was hoping somebody would have an answer
It was
to that.
4, I believe. It was Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America. So 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I feel like there's also room for them to start introducing new characters.
Yes.
Personally, I think that'll make things very, very cluttered, but I also am not somebody who's the most well versed in the comics. And I don't know. I mean, like the Guardians
We have
of
the
Galaxy.
Eternals.
Yeah,
the
the
Eternals
next
is
big
the
friend,
sure,
which is
yeah.
not the most of all their comic books. That's not the most popular
But I mean,
one.
neither
but
was
yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
True.
Yes.
True.
So I think that I don't know. It's tough. I hope that we see Korg. I would be really happy for
Aw.
Korg
If
Korg
taking
were
That
some
would be
sort of-
officially an
fun.
Avenger.
I would
Korg
be
and me?
so happy. Or even, I mean, like if he was like a Groot role, you know? Mm-hmm. Like I would
Yeah.
be so into
yeah.
that.
I'd be into that too.
I'd be super into that. And then Taika Waititi can like direct everything.
I gotta
Yeah, I
imagine
know,
he's going
right?
to be
He's
tagging
so
along
great.
with Guardians, though,
I think
right?
so.
Yeah.
I
Now
hope
that Thor is
so.
over there,
I really
too.
hope so. But do you think that would like tip the scales too much to have like too many of those like comic relief goofy characters? Because I feel like he fulfills a very similar role as Groot.
As Groot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a different conversation.
Interesting.
In terms
Yeah, I was
of
like, might
the
be
new
overload.
Avengers, I'm curious how much more of Thor we're gonna get. Just from like a logistical standpoint of like how long Chris Hemsworth has been a part of this franchise. If they'd be willing to, how much they're willing to bet that he's willing to stay on.
Yeah.
Because
I know
that's
he
a long
said-
time.
I hope he
He
stays.
loved Ragnarok. I know
Yeah.
the first two Thor
Yeah.
films he was not the biggest fan of, but I think once he did Ragnarok, he was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I love this character." And
He's-
I think he wants to go on for a while.
Yeah.
Clearly been having a blast.
He's
yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
He loved the tone of it. I want to see him and Chris Pratt together. I want to see like a bunch of
Yes.
buddy cop movies. Like
Yes.
I really do. They have exceptional chemistry. Like them together, just those scenes, I was in stitches. You know what I mean? So I definitely hope that he stays on board. I'm cool with that.
But as
a
with
Guardians of the
Guardians, not
Galaxy.
the
Yeah,
Avengers.
yeah,
So
yeah.
back
So
to
who
the
do we have
Avengers.
on
So I
the
guess we didn't
Avengers,
answer
I
that
guess?
So
question.
I think we're gonna
Avengers
get
team.
Valkyrie.
You think
Yeah.
Valkyrie's
I
going to
think
be
we'll
an
get her.
Avenger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I like that.
Black Panther?
Yeah. for
Yeah,
sure.
Black Panther.
Doctor Strange?
Especially who are they trying to bring in? I mean, don't forget, we also have X-Men now with the Fox Disney deal going
Fantastic
on.
Four.
X-Men, Fantastic Four. I mean,
We didn't even tap into that. yet,
there's comic books. I think it was Brian Michael Bendis wrote Avengers versus X-Men. I mean, there's just so much stuff.
Ooh,
They
that
can,
would
I
be
mean,
so fun.
ooh.
How soon do you think we get another Fantastic Four movie?
I think
3-4
sooner than
years.
we get another X-Men movie.
Ooh, yeah, because they have to.
I think
recast it.
Fantastic Four are going to show up.
Do we get a good Fantastic
Yeah,
Four
that-
movie?
that
I think
is the
that's
real
like,
question.
when
Yeah,
do we
I
get
mean,
that?
if
question.
Kevin Feige's still doing it, like, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so by the time we see more Avengers, I don't think any of the Fantastic Four or X-Men will be in the next Avengers lineup.
Right, they're
Even
not,
if it's Avengers versus one of those
Right.
groups, like I don't think we're going to see Beast as an Avenger.
Yeah.
But some combination, it's got to be. I think Black Panther and Shuri, because Shuri's got the tech. You need somebody that's in there with the tech. I think Doctor Strange brings the weird magic
Yeah.
to the
Yep.
table, which and then Spider-Man obviously still there, and then Captain Marvel's going to show back up as an Avenger, even if she's not, she's just kind of like the Thor presence of just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
brings the lightning, I guess. Would that be a good team? You guys on board for that?
Down with that
Yeah,
team.
cool.
I'd
Black
watch
Black
more.
I'm
Panther.
definitely down.
I'd watch
Wait,
some
you
more
forgot
stories.
Black
about
Panther
Valkyrie.
kind of the leader.
Oh,
Doctor
Valkyrie.
Strange.
Valkyrie.
And
Yeah.
I'm a
Valkyrie
big
too.
Valkyrie fan,
Yeah.
so I'd like her.
Okay.
What if we were talking about the A-Force though? Like, I hope that actually happens. I would be so down for that. We were talking about like when all the girls came together and it was like Wasp and Mantis and Valkyrie.
Ant-Man.
Akoi was in there. Yeah.
Ant-Man.
Oh, Ant-Man.
Yeah.
How do we
Ant-Man
forget
and the
about
Wasp.
Ant-Man?
There's
Yeah.
so many people.
Because he's
I mean,
so
they
tiny.
could, yeah. Oh,
Good
good
point.
one. Yeah.
So, let's think about it this way real quick. In the original 6 Avengers,
Yeah.
we had Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. So, who's going to replace those? I think you put Black Panther
Yeah.
instead of Tony.
One
I
of the big
think,
6, yeah.
Spider-Man instead of Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah,
do you
I
play-
think they fulfill a very.
I think
yeah.
they
Yeah.
kind of.
That's
They
fair.
About
kinda-
Widow though.
They
who
have that
replaces
like
Widow?
Naya.
I think Black Widow.
Do we say
I
Valkyrie
think we're going to get a new Black Widow in Black Widow's standalone movie.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So Black Widow's standalone movie is going to be a
That's-
prequel.
That's right,
and
'cause
they're
she was
gonna set
trained
up
with
a
other people,
younger
yeah.
protege or
That's-
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
good. Yeah.
we're just going to get another Black Widow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you've got Captain Marvel kind of replacing the Thor thing.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange. I don't know who
Replacing
he
himself?
replaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hulk. I don't know.
Yeah, sure, that works.
I
That
kind
works.
of.
But then
I could see that.
yeah, a
Because
little
the
bit.
Hulk kind of is this like present, not really present. Like he just kind of pops in and out and does his thing.
He's
Yeah.
also
Very
he's also
helpful when he's
another
needed.
smart guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the smart guy.
Smart
You gotta
guy.
have the other
There we go.
smart guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then who are we missing? Ant-Man will be in there instead of Hawkeye,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
And then I do think where we're getting at A4. That's why I don't know that Valkyrie's
I'm really.
gonna
I'm
show
just.
up.
I think I
Like,
know we're talking about the movies. I'm just so curious about Disney Plus. So I want to know what these stories are. I'm so
I
curious to know what the
know. What are
Hawkeye
they gonna
story is
do?
going to be about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we didn't even talk about the new Captain America.
Yeah.
Like Sam
Yeah.
Wilson.
Falcon and Bucky have a series, so it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are the two of them going to be off the table for the
Yeah.
next Avengers lineup because they have a series?
like
Surely not,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
it's
what
gonna take a
I'm
while.
really curious about is with Disney Plus coming in, and we all watch this stuff both because we all clearly are passionate about it, but also it's kind of part of our jobs. Like how many average people consume all of this content? So like I think the assumption that if Disney made the assumption that it's like, oh, all of these Disney Plus shows are like essential viewing to understanding what happens in the next Avengers movie, in addition to watching all of these other movies, that's like a really big ask from the audience.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
So even if like they live in the same universe, I'm curious how much separation we'll see between the films and the Disney Plus shows.
Yeah.
Probably none.
Cool, everybody, watch.
I won't put it past
Quit your
everybody to
jobs.
be like they're gonna start running ads for Disney Plus in front of the movies. We're like, by the way,
Yeah.
they're gonna run
We
spoilers.
want your money.
They're like,
You
if
gotta
you
get
haven't
all
watched
of it.
Disney Plus, like you're not
Yeah.
gonna get this movie. So
Yeah.
get out
Yeah,
of the theater, go home.
they like freeze frame halfway through. They're like confused. Should have watched the new show for Loki.
Yeah.
That would have answered all the questions. And then they like keep
$6.99,
rolling
yeah.
it.
Yep. Okay, so it was an insane weekend. We had Avengers Endgame opening in theaters, and then Game of Thrones, the Battle of Winterfell, a lot going on. it was a very emotional weekend for me,
was
to say
tough.
the least. Yeah. But just a quick spoiler warning. We're going to be talking about Avengers Endgame. We're going to be talking about Game of Thrones. So make sure you're all caught up there. But okay, let's begin. Let's begin this big debate here. Avengers
real
Endgame
fast.
or Game of Thrones? Which conclusion has been more satisfying?
Well, see, this is the thing here. Now, let me say this: Game of Thrones is not concluded yet, so we have to give it
Sneaking
that.
up on it.
But
Yeah.
after
I would also argue, real
but-
quick, I would argue that Endgame hasn't really, because we
True.
don't know how they're going to tie
True.
up some of the threads that are
True.
like,
Yeah.
the next movie we see in the MCU might make Endgame not a terribly satisfying. And so the jury's
Okay.
still out on
Yeah,
both
yeah.
to
So
an extent.
I'll structure it like this. If we're taking the first 3 episodes of season 8 of Game of Thrones, I think
And the
it
first
is
3 hours of
the first 3
Endgame.
hours.
First 3
The
hours.
first 3 hours of Endgame.
That last 5 minutes with
I think it's on par. I think they were both executed to a T. I thought they
Which
were.
one
so,
do you pick?
I have to choose one.
Yeah, I was like, you ain't being neutral, no.
Wait, just so I can clarify.
I'm sorry.
I'm just clarifying
Yeah.
what you're picking. So, are you picking which one you think is like better in terms of a conclusion, or which
Yeah,
one
which
you,
one
like,
is a
would
Which
more
one
like
are more
satisfying
satisfying?
conclusion?
Yeah, which one are you more satisfied?
I'm gonna-
satisfying conclusion or satisfying to watch? Those are different.
Ooh.
Well, both.
Both.
Give
Yeah.
us
Okay.
both.
I'm gonna
Do both.
do
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. Because I think Game of Thrones in its first 2 episodes this season did a great job of setting up its characters, putting characters together that we haven't seen for a very long time, getting kind of just like these awesome character moments with Brienne being knighted, all these just very powerful moments. And then you had this basically hour-long epic battle, which was just so cool to watch. It was the feat that we've never seen on television before. Awesome special effects. Again, great character moments within that battle. Great scene with Sansa and Tyrion. Great scene with Lyanna Mormont having maybe the best death on TV this year. I mean, that's going to be hard to top.
That girl.
Yeah.
So
My
it was
favorite.
just so many cool moments. Even though Avengers was powerful, again, Game of Thrones is darker. There's more consequences. Kids die, little girls can get killed and crushed by giants. It happens. It's horrible, but it happens. You're not going to see that.
Look,
Look,
in
guys, that's a
Endgame.
real thing that we have to
Giants
deal
might
with.
come.
Little
And,
girls are going to get
in
crushed by
Endgame,
giants.
people kind of float away. They just kind of like ash goes and they're gone. So I loved Endgame. It's just
Yeah.
I think Game of Thrones for me was more powerful.
Am I allowed to pick on you for a second?
Yes.
Please
Yes,
do.
pick away.
I think it's really interesting that you say that Game of Thrones had real consequences. Because I think they wimped out.
I agree with you.
Continue.
I was going to jump on him as well, but you go first.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so do you want me to answer the question or just jump on him?
Just jump on him.
Easy
Okay,
now,
hey,
guys.
David.
Hi, how's that going?
Welcome back. No, I feel like with Game of Thrones, it felt like a huge wimp fest, to be honest with you, because they had this moment where everyone was bracing to lose their favorite character because there were so many that were assumed to die. And I kind of felt like this season has set itself up, while I have enjoyed it, and like you're talking about these powerful character moments, like the Brienne of Tarth getting knighted was huge, but like kill someone. Like it felt like they don't want to upset fans. It's so fan servicey that it's just kind of this happy world where it's like, oh, all of these people died, but no one you actually cared about. Like, we'll touch these C tier level characters, but we're not going to get rid of your Tyrions. We're not going to get rid of like a Jon Snow or a Dany. It's just this like big epic
Or
battle.
Jaime or Brienne.
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
or even Gendry. Like they were like smushed up against the wall going,
Yeah.
"Ah!"
Yeah.
for like the entire back half of the
Yeah.
episode.
It kind of, it honestly, to me, that part of the show felt like it wasn't true to the last 7 seasons that we've watched,
Yeah.
where every moment there are real consequences to being a bad fighter. There are real consequences for not having a certain conversation, where this felt like it was like, okay, like everybody's gonna win. And by I say everybody, I mean, that core cast of characters. And so
Yeah.
I actually kind of had an issue with Game of Thrones this weekend.
I will say it was a really interesting weekend in that you've got these 2 like incredible pop culture
Yeah.
obsessive franchises, and they're both sort of wrapping up at the same time, right? And so like there's all the fan service, and I think what both Avengers and Game of Thrones have done really well is they've nailed emotional beats.
Yes.
They like
Yeah.
pitch perfect.
They know their
emotional beats.
characters very
Yeah,
well.
Yes.
the characters
Yeah.
have all been paid off in really interesting ways. Like the conversation that you touched on a second ago about Tyrion and Sansa.
Yeah.
That was my favorite moment of the episode.
I cried.
Yeah.
When Sansa was like,
Yeah.
you weren't the worst. And he's like, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, what an awful thing to.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
those moments were great. And so I think they nailed the emotions of all of their characters in really interesting ways. Whereas Game of Thrones, like you said, kind of wimped out a little bit. Like we lost Sir Friendzone. We lost
stop.
Sir. We lost Barrett
Ed.
Dondarrion and Ed, and
Yeah.
we lost some of these guys that we know we have
we lost
connections to.
Theon. I thought that was pretty heartbreaking.
Theon was
But
the biggest
Theon
name, but
should've
we've been
died
done
when
with
he was
Theon
weak.
for a while, I think.
Like,
Theon should have
I
died
was
when he
so
was
done
raised.
with
No,
him at that point.
like,
Every
You guys are
episode.
kinda
how
hard
has
on
he
Game of
survived
Thrones.
through all
But
that?
Avengers, Endgame killed Tony
Avengers-
Stark.
But everybody else came
And
back.
so, like,
Everybody else came back.
Hold on,
yeah,
I'm going to defend David a little bit here. So, yes, I agree. Like, it didn't have the gravitas that I was expecting, but we still have 3 episodes
Sure.
left, right? So we could be getting hit with a lot of deaths here. So maybe they just didn't want to, for lack of a better word, just like do it all like
Right.
there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe we're going to see more to come. So,
So
yeah.
I get what you're saying, but I also feel like because they wrapped up such a major storyline in that episode, I would have expected there to be more consequences to wrapping up that storyline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like maybe if they hadn't killed the Night King, then I would have been like, oh, well, there's more to come.
Yeah.
But now you're telling me that some other army is just gonna, like, human army is just going to take out all of these heroes, or a significant portion of, not heroes, but the core cast, or a significant portion of them, but they didn't die in this huge battle that would have made a ton of sense because they're just up against this force.
Yeah.
So that was, and I say issue while also saying it was probably my favorite Game of Thrones episode to watch. I had a ton of fun watching.
Yeah.
They did a lot of really amazing things. But in terms of satisfying conclusions, I was extremely unsatisfied.
Yeah. And granted, there are 3 episodes left. Totally,
Yeah.
Yeah.
totally aware of that. I feel like the trajectory that they're on, I'm not super on board for with Game of Thrones. I think if you look at both of these franchises spending 10 years working towards something, and with how effectively Endgame stuck the landing, time travel paradoxes aside, like they really stuck the landing after 22 movies or
Yeah.
whatever. And so now after 70 whatever episodes of Game of Thrones, like I don't like where they're headed. I don't like that they wiped the Night King out before Cersei, because like for me
agree
the
with
point
that too, yeah.
the point of the Night King is like he's this force of nature, and like all of our squabbling and petty fighting over chairs is meaningless because
Yeah.
the Night King is coming and he's going to wipe everybody else out. And that's the drum that Jon has been beating this whole time.
Well,
and
now he doesn't have to.
Well, and that's the point of his character,
Yeah.
right? And then now they're done with that, and then they're just going to get back to all the petty squabbling, which to me sort of cuts the legs out of anything thematic that they were doing with the Night King. I wish they would have handled the Cersei business first.
I agree.
I mean, in
with that
terms
too.
of villains,
Yeah.
I give Endgame the edge because Thanos is just. I mean, the Night King we don't hear him say anything, so he's just this voiceless.
But it's nice
creature.
to have that black and white. Good,
Yeah, he's
good
dead.
and
He is
evil
dead.
Yeah,
in
he's
a
evil.
world of
He's pure
super
evil. Yeah.
gray, morality of Game of Thrones, to have one sort of unfeeling force of
Yeah.
nature be
Yeah.
the bad guy, like that to me was the more interesting part
That's
of the Night King.
So interesting that you say that, only because my biggest fear coming into this, I actually agree with everything you guys say, in spite of this, what I'm about to say is true. That was so confusing. But I was really worried going into this series or this season, because what I love about Game of Thrones is this moral gray area. You don't know who to root for because it's so ambiguous, like the moral ambiguity. And I was kind of bummed to know that I thought this epic battle was going to be very black and white, good versus evil. Clearly death is not who you're rooting for. And that to me felt very out of character for the show, and I was kind of bummed about it. But now that it's over, I'm also bummed. So I guess I'm the fan that can't be satisfied.
Sure.
Because I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why did you add all of this random stuff in here? And we don't get, like, I don't understand the rules of the Night King. Are the children of the forest just not relevant anymore?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good question too.
and
yeah.
I mean, like you said, we have 3 more episodes. Who knows?
and prequel series coming. So,
I just
yeah,
felt
we're
like
gonna-
they should have
we are
at
not done
least
with Game
had
of Thrones.
the Night King kill Bran. You know what I mean? Like it was like he was so close,
Yeah.
and it's like if they would have killed Bran, like Bran was kind of the one, like everyone like put so much importance on him. Like he's the one who like tells the tale of human beings, like how important the past and present and future is. Like for him to be taken out, I just think that would have just, I don't know, like really been an interesting way to conclude that episode. But then it was just like, oh wait, like Bran didn't get killed, nobody's really dead. Arya just comes out of frickin' nowhere. Like it just all wrapped up way too tightly. You know what I mean? I don't know.
The bow was too pristine, especially
Yes.
for it to being not only the 3rd episode in this season, but there's 3 more episodes.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that's
I
been
agree.
building literally since the first
Episode
scene
1,
of
yeah.
the series. The first scene
Yeah.
of the series, we meet White Walkers. So for as weighty an episode as it should have been, it's kind of a fart.
I'm going to say Avengers Endgame. I just thought the emotional beats were just struck so poignantly in Avengers Endgame. And to be honest, Game of Thrones has just been like a weird ride for me. I felt like the first episode, everything was happening so fast. And the second episode, it got really slow. And then like, the third episode was really fast again. I haven't been able to like really digest it
Get
as
your feet
well
under
as
you.
I did with Avengers Endgame. Like Avengers Endgame, I just like thoroughly enjoyed. You know what I mean? And Game of Thrones has been a roller coaster ride for me. So though I really cannot wait to see the next 3 episodes, I'm going to go Avengers Endgame.
David?
Game of Thrones.
More
Final
satisfied
answer.
with Game of Thrones.
Final
Is
answer.
that the jet
All right.
lag speaking? I'll give you an out.
I do have some jet lag. I have
Oh.
plane eyes right now, but I'm fine. Game of Thrones.
All right.
Sydney?
Probably Avengers Endgame, which is really funny for me to say because I was not looking forward to Endgame coming out, mostly because I loved that there was consequence in Infinity War, and I had a feeling that Endgame would probably undo a lot of that consequence. But I think they handled it in a way that didn't just feel like, well, everything that just happened doesn't matter. And I think juggling all the storylines and wrapping most of them up in pretty nice ways, respectable ways, I have to give it to them.
Yep.
Okay.
I totally agree. I'm going Avengers Endgame also. Just like you say, there was, the consequences of Infinity War. They were undone, but there was a price. I don't see that necessarily happening with Game of Thrones. But look, Game of Thrones, I feel like I've been beat up by Game of Thrones
Yeah.
over the
Yeah,
years. From
absolutely.
the Red Wedding to Ned Stark getting beheaded.
I don't know. I would
to,
take the
like
Red Wedding at
every
this point.
moment along the way. I just feel it's a slog for me at this point, and I just want it to be over.
Yep,
And I think at some point
100%.
I'll be able to look back and be like, wow, that was really cool, because obviously it's huge and it's cool, but I just kind of need it to be over.
Yep.
That's fair.
All right, it is time once again for our What to Watch Quick Picks, where we each get 30 seconds to convince you of what we want to watch. This week, we're a little MCU heavy this
Yeah.
week and last week with Avengers, so we are making some suggestions for non-MCU superhero movies. So them's the rules. We got a narrow target to
I'm
hit this
excited to
week.
see what everyone picked.
All right.
Who's starting?
Jackie, you're starting.
Okay.
I introduced the segment, you get to
Okay.
start.
Okay. All right. I'm ready. I made a couple notes
Don't use them.
following you. I know. Papers turned over. Okay. Tom, tell me when to go. Tom.
He's going to start the clock when you start.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
He explained that earlier, didn't he? Okay. All right, everybody. My selection was Superman from 1978, starring Christopher Reeve. Also, Kal-El was played by Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor. It's just an exceptional cast, amazing acting, and to be honest, this is really the first superhero movie I ever connected with. I just think it has a delightful story. Christopher Reeve is absolutely adorable and the sweetest and best Superman in my opinion. And Gene Hackman is such a great Lex Luthor. He is charming and he's intelligent and he wears like awesome 70s clothes.
I would like to talk to you about a movie named Blade. Blade is it's a vampire movie, but not like your typical. This isn't he's a handsome guy, but I wouldn't call it like a Twilight movie. It's not like, there's no sparkling going on here. One of the best opening I'm not even telling you what the movie's about. That's okay. One of the best opening sequences in any comic book movie happens in a blood rave where Wesley Snipes goes in as Blade. He is the Daywalker. He's half vampire, half human. He just kills a bunch of vampires. It's really cool. Stephen Dorff plays an excellent villain. You should check it out.
Good,
Well
David.
played.
Very
So
good.
what's the movie about?
Yeah.
It's about
Vampire.
Blood
It's
raves.
about
Yeah.
handsome
Blood raves and
vampires.
vampires.
Got it. Okay.
Sydney, what do you got?
Okay. So today I'm here to tell you that you should watch Chronicle, which is a great film. That's not MCU. It is about these 3 kiddos, and it's just like this coming of age story, and it's so great because it is an origin story, but not really in a way that you would expect. And it's the reason that like found footage films are fun and great. So basically I'm telling you, they find footage of these 3 kids and you're like, whoa, they have powers. And then you're watching them struggle with their powers. And while it does follow like a similar arc of that, it's also better than that. And you should totally watch it because it's great.
Good conclusion.
Nice.
She wrapped
Speaking
up
to the
well.
wrap-up.
She wrapped
Good
up well.
work. Guys, the right answer is The Incredibles, because in 2004, it did a lot of superhero things first. Before the Dark Knight trilogy, before the MCU, it grounded the superhero genre in a different, more familiar genre, because it totally nailed that mid-century James Bond spy movie aesthetic, but it also grounded all the powers, all the theme of the movie in a really familiar family dynamic, which was super interesting. So yes, X-Men came before it, Spider-Man came before it, but really The Incredibles set up the modern superhero movies as we know it. No! The buzzer turns into a if you finish early.
We have that
you guys notice that?
IGN money. We get the nice
Yeah,
buzzers.
we got those AI buzzers.
You always pick family movies. No, not true. You picked The Legend of Cocaine Island a few
That's true.
days ago, so that was
The Incredibles is a great
definitely.
movie.
Which was about a guy that
Not.
just wanted to take care of his family with
Oh,
cocaine.
okay. Well,
money.
then there you go.
Yeah.
Another family movie.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week on What to Watch. Let us know, guys, what is your favorite non-MCU superhero movie? That's what we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to
And,
know.
and we will see you next week. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter. I am at Clint Gage.
I'm a Jackie Jing.
I'm at Griffin DE.
I'm at Sid So Good.
And if you want to talk straight at us, Jackie, what's our hashtag again?
Our hashtag is IGN. W2W.
The hand signal is
signals.
required. We'll see you
We
guys
love
next
it,
week.
David.
David, do you want to get some sleep now?